ultimate nature of reality that provides you with the prerequisites and preconditions for logic and reason and truth and ethical imperatives. What is that? And most of the time, you'll just get gobbledygook, diversionary, and obstructionist tactics. You'll get philosophy speak. Listen, you can take this to the bank. They cannot account or give a rational justification for what the ultimate nature of reality upon which they can invoke any contingent states of affairs, or to put it another way, to stipulate what is possible and not possible. So all of their knowledge statements ultimately begin with "I don't know." And if you don't believe me, bring me any atheist.
Whoever asked that question is a really good resource on this.
Yeah.
It's a book by Alvin Plantinga called "Where the Conflict Really Lies: Religion, Science, and Naturalism."
Okay, hold on a second. "Where the Conflict Really Lies" by Plantinga. Okay,
Yep.
I'm not familiar with that title.
Yep.
Yeah,
Religion,
I mean, I have a
science.
lot of admiration for Alvin Plantinga,
Yep.
but he only gives rationales for a generic God.
Yes. That's
That's the problem with Plantinga.
Yeah.
Now the thing about Plantinga,
Craig does. Oh, actually, no. Craig doesn't, because he focuses on Jesus
the
and
great
Nazareth,
thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I can't hold a candle to Plantinga. The guy's a brilliant philosopher, and I have a lot of admiration for him. So that doesn't mean that we cannot learn wisdom from him as a Christian and as a philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys are not perfect. Nobody is flawless. I mean, look, like for example, people have tried to use William Lane Craig in his critique of presuppositionalism out of the 5 basic views. They've tried to use that against me, and what they don't realize is when they resort to William Lane Craig, somebody who they reject all of his reasonings and arguments anyway. William Lane Craig is not flawless. For example, in his critique of presuppositionalism, he evaluated Cornelius Van Til, and he said Van Til was not a philosopher. Now, Craig made a huge blunder there, and John Frame, who was a student of Van Til, has pointed this out, and Craig was corrected on this. Cornelius Van Til earned a PhD in philosophy.
Right.
I believe it was from Princeton University.
Okay.
Yeah. He had great expertise in certain subcategories of philosophy as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, no one's perfect, obviously. Plantinga could probably do some.
Not trying to trash Craig, I mean.
No, for sure. I mean, he's made large
I praise him where I can, and I'll.
Right. I mean, we all have our indifferences, etc. But I mean,
isn't he the most influential in terms of what you call it?
Now,
Christian apologetics.
In Bonson's lectures, he points out that he and Van Til are not against Christian evidences. In fact, Van Til wrote a book called Theistic Christian Evidences. It's just that Christian theistic evidences must be presented in a correct manner, and not one that sacrifices the Christian worldview. Okay, we don't cater to the autonomy of man when we present Christian evidences. So what Bonson, in clarifying Van Til, stated was theistic evidence.
Your headset cut out, Darth.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, I think he cut out.
Dawkins. Is there no movement?
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Oh, there's Darth.
He must have died or something.
Rest in peace, Darth.
Rip.
Hear him saying how to answer.
He's basically given the kind of theistic apologetic, sort of answers.
Can I read you guys a Bible quote while Darth is? Not concerning the matters about which he wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. In the Bible, man.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Not concerning the matters about which you wrote, It is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. Right in the Bible. Bible
Okay, and verse and chapter, and in what context was that used? And also, I'd like the translation you're using.
Corinthians,
Yes.
chapter 7, verse 1.
Okay.
And this pocket Bible has some weird
And
religious guy gave me.
what context is it being used?
It's talking about prostitution. It's
Great.
kind of a meme.
Okay.
But I do like that Bible quote out of context.
Wait, is that from the Old Testament?
No, that is so not true. Read verses 2 and 3. He goes on to say, if you must get married, but he says it's better to not have sex. But if you are led in temptation, it's better to get married.
Well, yes.
That's what he says. It's totally out of context. What he's just
I know.
saying.
I understand. I said that it was out of context myself.
He said it was. Yeah. He was memeing.
Okay.
It's all good.
He got really mad for a second.
Yeah.
So I was actually trying to talk like multiple times, and I realized I muted myself, so I was a little bit frustrated myself.
Dude, I'm concerned about you. Is there a hurricane going on around you?
I'm driving. Sorry.
Oh, that's not safe.
It's fine.
Distracted driving.
Unless hands-free voice activated.
Yeah, I'm wearing a headset.
As we wait for Darth to get back,
You have to walk
he must
his
have
dog.
he must have restarted his computer or something. I mean, he cut out mid sentence.
Hi. So did the atheist bashing session end?
I kind of did. Right?
For a little bit, just
Atheist bashing session.
You're good, Bill. Say what you think right now.
I wish that
I think
had enough time
presuppositionalism
to-
isn't as strong as he makes it out to be. I think most Christian philosophers are not presuppositionalists in any.
See, here's the thing. Like, it's really easy to convince, but like if he's really good at sounding like he's smart. That's he'll use these big words on you, and it's like the boogeyman.
Well, he's a good orator, and he really goes for, what do you call it, steel manning people's
skills.
positions.
Wait, what are the big words? That
Yeah,
he uses
he's
that you
better
don't
than Mr.
understand?
Batman.
What are the big words that he uses that you don't understand?
Nothing that I don't understand.
No, I was following him, here and there.
He just name drops, makes it sound like lots of academics are actually presuppositionalists when not many are.
All right, is my mic working?
Yeah, you're back.
No, it's not working.
Okay, the fact that most Christian philosophers are not presuppositionalists, so what? So,
Yeah, it doesn't.
Okay, so
it doesn't
because
prove anything right or wrong.
wait a minute,
Of course it doesn't. It just is a little insight.
No. What you know? What that could be an insight is that they're catering to the autonomy of unbelieving reasoning.
Sure, you could make up some reason why, but I mean, what's the real reason? How do we figure that out?
Wait a minute.
Are you in your
Wait
car?
a minute. Hold on a second.
I am.
When a Christian philosopher shows up for a debate with a non-believing philosopher, okay, if we argue over certain details of reason, if a non-presuppositional a non-presuppositionalist Christian philosopher will be conceding to a state of affairs that does not exist, namely the autonomy of reason. In the Christian worldview, the reason why even an atheist can think and tie his shoelaces in virtue of God's creative and revelatory acts. Okay? So to grant the atheist certain prerequisites and preconditions is to grant them states of affairs that cannot be accounted for in their worldview. Now, the reason why a lot of Christian philosophers won't be outspoken or use presuppositionalism is because it wouldn't be respectable. But you see, that's not what we're after here. What we are here for in the Christian worldview when we debate, okay, it's not so much about persuasion. It is to show those who psychologically deceive themselves about the reasons why they don't believe in the Christian God, is that their rationale is a complete incoherent mess. Okay, now do Christian philosophers do that in general? No, they don't.
It's mostly the case that you won't get many debates with Christian presuppositionalists because you won't have an opponent to accept it, really.
Now, who in here said most Christian philosophers are not presuppositionalists?
Oh, I did.
Okay, have you listened to the debate between Greg Bonson and Gordon Stein?
I have not.
Okay, I strongly recommend that you listen to it and listen to it several times. It's on YouTube.
What is it again,
audio
Darth?
quality? It's called the Great Debate between Greg Bonson and Gordon Stein.
Greg Bonson, Gordon
Bonson,
Stein.
Bahncen. Okay.
I'm gonna go watch that now. Actually,
Now,
yeah.
Now, by the way, it's not a video; it's audio. Right?
Oh,
Now,
is it? Okay.
Okay. Gordon Stein was one of the most elite atheist debaters that they had to offer. Okay. Greg Bonson had a PhD in philosophy and epistemology. Okay. He didn't come, wheeling and dealing his wisdom. He used biblical presuppositionalism, and he diced and sliced this secular philosopher. Okay.
I'm gonna head out, but thanks for the conversation, Darth.
If you're
Okay.
a presuppositionalist or looking to argue with presuppositionalists, you have to watch Greg Bonson. It's like,
Could you say that again, please?
if you're a presuppositionalist or you're trying to argue with someone that's a presuppositionalist, you have to listen to Greg Bonson.
Oh, absolutely. No matter what side you come from,
It's like required reading.
Absolutely. If one is going to debate against or critique presuppositionalism, being familiar with Bonson's insights is I think critical.
Do you have a server that you frequent, Darth, or like your own server or something?
I frequently this one's the most common. I have my own server, but it's people don't want to attend.
Well, if you want to send me an invite.
Christians do, but
yeah, shoot me an invite if you will.
Yeah, I'll invite you. It's called Debate Religion.
Debate Religion. Okay.
But when you're talking about these things with people, don't you think persuasion is the ultimate goal?
Yes and no. Because you see, my mindset is that what they're telling me, their reasons for unbelief, is not the truth. They're uttering psychological self-deceptions as to why they don't believe God. God says they don't believe in God because they're running from God. God says there is ample, overwhelming, objective evidence of God's existence. So when people say, there is not objective evidence for God, okay? So now we have two different eyewitness testimonies. We have God's and we have the unbeliever. And as a Christian, I'm compelled to accept what God says is the condition. So,
but as non-Christians, as soon as you say they're just deceiving themselves and they're not being honest with themselves, they're not going to listen to anything else you have to say.
Well, wait a minute, okay? When we now, granted, I should be more patient. Sometimes I'm too blunt. Sometimes, I'll give insults. But our goal is not so much persuasion, okay? Our goal is to show them that their position is completely untenable. Their position is look, let me explain something to you, right? Are you familiar with a reductio ad absurdum?
Of course, yes.
Okay. A reductio ad absurdum is an indirect line of reasoning as opposed to a direct line of reasoning. I could sit there and say, Mr. Atheist, the heavens declare the glory of God. They go, oh, I'm not persuaded by that. Okay. They have all of their rationales. Their rationales are indeed psychological self-deceptions. So what we need to go to now is to go to the nuclear strength of biblical tactics, okay? And we need to quote the ultimate authority, God. Not me, not Pearly Gates, not anyone else, God. God says he's the creator and sustainer of all things. God says he's the ultimate precondition for everything. The atheist says, oh, no, I don't accept that God's the ultimate. Say, oh, okay, good. So then you take whatever the atheist says and you show them how it's incoherent. It ultimately comes down to, well, this is the case because I don't know. Now, you need to show them that their position is foolishness. Okay?
Well, my only point would be that I think, like, as Christians, isn't the ultimate goal to save people's souls in a way? So, I mean, shouldn't persuasion always be the number one?
No. Our goal is to faithfully communicate the truth of God's world. And when we faithfully communicate the truth of God's world, we will also be simultaneously be communicating the message of salvation. You see, the mistake in Western civil Christianity, and especially in the United States, Christianity in the United States, and I'm talking about evangelical Bible-believing Christianity, has been hijacked by
Republican
consumerism.
Party.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, so Pearly, are you familiar with the name Robert Schuller?
I am not.
Okay. Are you familiar with the name Rick Warren?
I am.
Okay. Are you familiar with the name of Bill Hybels?
No.
Okay. Bill Hybels is the pastor of Willow Creek Church in Chicago. He is the Chicago version of Rick Warren. Both of these men were instructed and significantly influenced by Robert Schuller. Now, that name is important and significant for you to understand the evangelistic mentality that has swept Christianity in the United States. Robert Schuller was a rank apostate. He was a rank false teacher. He was more into New Age ideas than he was historic Christianity, but he duped a lot of evangelical-minded people into believing that he was a Christian, including Billy Graham. Billy Graham stupidly not only bought into him being a Christian, but actually endorsed this guy. Schuller's mentality is not that people need to be saved from their sin. They need to be saved from poor self-esteem. And people don't need to be saved. They need to be churched. And so you need to get people churched, not saved. And so if you're going to get people church, you're going to want to find out what motivates them. What kind of church services do they like? What kind of services don't they like? So to make a long story short, what has taken over in a lot of American evangelism is a consumerist mentality. If you want somebody to buy your product, you have to make it as appealing as possible. That is not the biblical way. That is not what Jesus did. Jesus did not make himself as appealing as possible. He boldly asserted himself as the ultimate authority and the truth of God's word, and let the chips fall where it may. And to the humble who recognized his authority, they accepted it. And to those who weren't humble and who were psychologically deceiving themselves, they rejected his ministry. Okay? So when we're dealing with unbelievers to varying degrees, it's not so much that they need to be persuaded, it's they need to be showed the foolishness. Now, there are some unbelievers who are right on the brink of believing, and they have certain unanswered questions about, oh, gee, why should I believe the Bible rather than evolution or things like that? With those people, you don't need to go with the full guns of presuppositionalism. Okay?
I feel like 1 sec, I have to order something, but that was interesting.
What are you going to order?
Subway.
All right.
Subway's open this late?
Well, he could be on the West Coast. Hey, Danny. You there?
Darth, how are you? Yeah.
They were making me feel bad. They told me that you don't agree with everything I say. I had a good cry.
Oh man, I hate
Don't
being thrust into all that.
don't you love how they try to pit other believers against me?
Yeah, it's actually. Uh,
So I just respond like, well, maybe Danny's right and I'm wrong.
It's exhausting, man.
You know, it's funny. As much as they claim they despise and hate my guts, they relish me coming into Krillism.
Oh, they love you. You're like their number one. They're your number one fans.
Did you ever see? Did you ever see The Incredibles?
Yeah, I did.
You remember Incrediboy when he gets in the car with Mr. Incredible?
Yeah. That's in the beginning, huh?
He looks up to Mr. Incredible. He goes, I know all your catchphrases. I know all your moves. I'm your number one fan.
Yeah, I'm excited for the second movie.
Oh yeah, I love the first one. I can't wait till the second one. That's good. That's a long-awaited sequel.
Guess what book I ordered? I'm gonna read it.
Wait a minute. The Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey.
Good guess.
Wait a minute.
No.
The Life and Times of Madeline Murray O'Hare.
No, I got the. I think it's Mind, Brain, and Free Will by Swinburne.
Oh,
If
okay.
you've read it.
No, I haven't. I haven't read that.
Well, what's interesting is I like his introduction because it's fairly non-controversial, so that I can like learn a lot from the book prior to actually getting to the meat or his root argument. So he talks about the different sort of constituents of a world, like substance, properties, and events, and just kind of thoroughly explains each. But
Well,
supposedly a good book on.
Keep me up to date on how good it is.
I will.
You know, it's funny. As much as they complain and whine and trash me, have you ever heard even one atheist in the Krillism room give you a coherent account for the nature of reality?
I mean, I haven't heard anything in that room, no.
Yeah, and yet they want to make all these knowledge claims, but what do those knowledge claims depend upon? The answer is they have nothing. And then they turn around and they go, well, you're in the same boat. Oh, okay. So you admit you have nothing, but you're going to make a knowledge claim from nothing.
Are you still on good terms with Malpass?
Oh, yeah. I've actually debated or conversed with him 8 times. He made a big mistake when he said to me that he was not dogmatic. And I said, he told me that the only thing that he's dogmatic about is his culinary taste. Now, if you're going to be making knowledge claims, you better be dogmatic about something.
What about operating knowledge?
What does that mean?
I mean, just something that you use because it's a useful assumption.
Whatever we know is in virtue of God's creative acts. If somebody claims that they can know something independent of God's creative acts, then they can tell us how that is. But they won't be able to do so.
What if they don't know whether or not it is independent or dependent on God's creative acts, but they just know that, or they rely on it.
No,
They
the
rely on a plan.
unbelievers don't know anything in principle.
What
Do
about
they-
a priori statements
let
like
me-
mathematics or something like that?
Hold on a second. Okay. So no, they don't even know that, because that's going to rely on their ability to have the reliability of memory and reliability of cognition. Okay. So what I'm saying to you is, from a non-believer's worldview, and especially the atheist worldview, in principle, they don't know anything. Now, in God's world, they do know some things, because God has made them to know certain things, in spite of the fact that they're psychologically deceiving themselves about the non-existence of God. Okay? So in their based upon their worldview, they don't have the capacity to know anything.
Well, I mean, I know that I feel like I'm driving a car. I'm experiencing the road right now. I mean, I know that because I mean, it's just part of my consciousness.
Okay. Do you know that ultimately in virtue of God's creative acts?
I don't know.
Well, then when you give me a contingent states of affairs, which also is a knowledge claim, it's ultimately going to go back to I don't know. So then, do you really know it?
I do. It's like self-evident. I know that I'm experiencing things.
Wait a minute. Let's go one at a time. Tell me something that you know.
I know I see the color green right now.
Okay. Now, do you, when you make that statement, are you presupposing that your memory faculties are operating in a basic, reliable way?
I'm not so sure. I mean, even if I didn't know the concept of green, I still have the.
Wait a minute. In order to see the color
Come on,
green,
let me answer here. Let me answer.
Go ahead.
I mean, even if I have no cognitive function, I still have the phenomenal sensation of seeing the qualia.
You're still putting it through a cognitive process. Okay, so when you refer to the qualia, you're actually relying on the presupposition that you are remembering correctly, even within a split second. Okay, so for example, when I'm talking to you right now, and you immediately respond to me, like suppose I say my car is blue, and then you just said your car is blue. That statement relies on the presupposition that your basic memory faculties remembered correctly that I said my car was blue. And it also relies on the presupposition that your fundamental basic cognitive apparatus operates reliably.
Well, no, it doesn't have to be reliably. Even if I'm diluted in a brain in a vat, I still experience the qualia.
No. But you see, that statement you just gave me is a cognitive process. It presupposes a basic reliability in order to assert that. Understand?
Excuse me, William. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm not so sure if I agree with that though.
Throat.
I do.
Hello?
Yeah, I do too.
No, I meant Moon.
Yeah. So I've been like hearing you talk for a while now, and I realized that you're actually explaining every metaphysical questions that we can ask ourselves through the existence of God Himself. But I don't think the way you're doing it is the right way. So you're using the argumentation of Descartes, I suppose, through the reliability.
No, I'm not invoking Descartes.
Oh, okay, because you were talking about reality. I can't talk English. I'm sorry. Of the senses.
That's okay. Take your time.
So there, you're basically explaining every metaphysical questions through the existence of God, but it's not because you can explain it through the existence of God that it is the truth, the ultimate truth, is it?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know how much you listen to what I have to say. Have you heard me before?
Yeah, I've been here for about 15 minutes, I think.
Oh, okay. I'm not just talking about a generic God. I'm saying that all of our capacities, whatever they are ultimately derivative and contingent upon the Christian God, not just a generic God.
Okay.
Right? And we know things in virtue of God's creative acts. And his creative acts includes natural revelation and special revelation. God's natural revelation includes down to the very fundamental cognitive processes that we have that the Bible refers to as being made in the image of God. Now, if somebody rejects that, okay, that the God of the Bible is the necessary prerequisite for everything, then they're going to have to account for that which exists, which is ultimate, that makes God unnecessary, that does provide them with the capacity to reason and to think.
Why do they have to account for that?
Because then otherwise their propositions and predications are without basis.
What if they say that that is one of many possible bases that they are not sure of because there's not enough reason, or they don't particularly pick one?
No, you're not understanding. When we make truth statements or knowledge claims, we generally, people understand knowledge to be a belief that's true that has a justificatory path. Okay.
True. Okay.
Okay.
Accept that.
Now, in the Christian worldview, the God of the Bible's creative acts, which entail his natural revelation and special revelation, are those justificatory paths. So when an unbeliever either denies or withholds belief in the Christian God, then they're going to have to give an account for their capacity to think, to reason, to make truth claims and knowledge claims.
Why do they have to give that account?
Because then we can say anything and nobody can object. So I can say to you that the reason why you're wrong about your choice in women is because the moon has green cheese on the inside. And you say, what? And if you say how does that follow? Say, well, because I don't know.
Well, that's exactly how I would respond to everything you've said, is that it's just an arbitrary thing that you've come up with. And
okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Or
Okay,
I mean, maybe not arbitrary, but in other words,
well, let me ask you this question.
that objection, I would say, would be, if, in other words, in that same scenario where someone could say the moon or the cheese or whatever, someone could also, in that same void, come up with exactly the same sort of system.
It's a special revelation of the moon. I mean,
it's just,
okay,
it's,
all right.
how do you distinguish yourself from
okay,
this?
well, first of all, it would be a very bad parody of an unbeliever to say that the moon was giving revelation.
Why?
Okay. Well, revelation is a type of communication. How do inanimate objects, and especially that don't have a mind, how do they communicate?
How do we know about God? Through an inanimate object called a book?
No. We know about God through his natural revelation and special revelation.
Right, but
how do we know about
the moon could
now,
also do those same things?
Well, wait, no. Okay, well, here's the problem. Okay. You can reject. God gives you the opportunity to reject that he is the creator and sustainer of all things. When you do that, okay, the Bible says he has turned the wisdom of the world into foolishness, so that when you make knowledge claims, I don't care what it is, whatever knowledge claims you make, I'm going to ask you, what is the basis for that?
Right, I got you.
And either you're going to have an answer to that question, or your knowledge claim is going to be asserted in virtue of I don't know. So if you ask me, how do I know that my dog is hungry, or how do I know that the sky is blue, or anything, I would say, well, ultimately and finally, the reason why I know anything is in virtue of God's creative acts, the way he's constructed this world, the way he's constructed my mind to operate, things like that, right? Now, when you reject that, then some other ultimate state of affairs makes God unnecessary and provides you with the foundation for the prerequisites for knowledge, wisdom, truth, logic. Okay?
Right. Okay.
Now,
Can I respond?
sure. Go ahead.
So when you started off by saying that God was the prerequisite for that kind of basically God is the prerequisite for all those things, right? The basis for any kind of worldview that could provide those kind of answers. I could replace the word God with the moon. Now, the only difference is that when at one point you said based on the Bible, you mentioned the Bible. And now I would ask you, what do you mean by that? Because I feel like that's a little bit different from God, isn't it?
Let me help you out here, okay?
Sure.
When you reject the Christian worldview and you make an appeal to some other basis to make sense of existence, you're going to think that you can make sense of things, but you ultimately can't. And I can demonstrate that by simply asking you questions. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So when you make an appeal to the moon, you're making an appeal to the reliability of your memory faculties. You're making an appeal to the reliability of your basic cognition. You're making an appeal that there is in existence fundamental laws of logic by which you can invoke metaphysically meaningful statements, such as the moon is spherical or whatever. Okay, so you see, when you make an appeal to the moon, you're not just making an appeal to the moon. Okay, there are other things that undergird that appeal.
I got you. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
But what if the moon was just simply a physical manifestation of essentially a god, if you will?
Okay.
That has the same properties of the god that you.
First of all,
then you're agreeing with him. Then
first of all, if you're going to reject the Christian worldview,
I haven't done so yet, but just okay.
Well, so you hold to the Christian worldview then?
I have not rejected it.
Well, let me explain something to you. And by the way, if anything I sounds like a personal attack, it's not intended to be. It's just that I debate people all the time, and it gets rough and tumble, and sometimes okay. So I don't want to.
Don't put gloves on for me, man. You can just say whatever you want, man. It's all good.
All right, good. All right, so where were we at? Because I lost my train of thought.
Talk about. I said the moon was maybe just a physical manifestation of the same type of God that you're speaking of.
Okay, all right. So you said you didn't reject the God of the Bible. Well, when I speak to you, I'm speaking from a specific model of reality. Okay, it's the God of Christian theism, right? When you speak to me, you will be either speaking from the God of Christian theism model of reality, or you're speaking from not the Christian God model of theism. Okay? It's your worldview. I'm applying the law of non-contradiction and the law of excluded middle to worldviews.
Right, but is it possible that neither of us knows what position I'm arguing from because I'm not entirely sure myself?
It doesn't matter. The point.
I mean, you're right.
Okay, I can agree with you that you may be unclear as to what your model of reality is. But the point is this: is that if you don't say that all of your capacities are from the God model, then because of the law of non-contradiction and excluded middle, it's from the not God model, even though you're unclear. You see, you're not. You see, there's a difference between being agnostic about gold on Mars versus agnostic about God. There is no neutrality when it comes with God. Gold on Mars is not the ultimacy of reality. Okay? Gold on Mars would be a contingent state of affairs that may or may not exist with respect to what the nature of reality is.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I got you there.
So there's no neutrality when it comes to what the ultimacy of reality is. Okay, people, go ahead.
Okay, so what if my understanding of my own faculties and the basis for them is one in which I hold that the God, the explanation that you give is a logically valid explanation, but I simply am not entirely. I don't know. I don't personally have a belief about where these things that I have come from.
Well,
But
then
I
you're
do
not.
acknowledge
Yeah.
that those things exist. I do acknowledge the
Okay.
validity of
Right.
the argument. Where does that put me if that's the case?
Okay.
I have a problem with your premises, Williams. So
Okay,
you're
can you just hold on a
saying,
second, Moon?
yeah,
No, just hold on
of
a
course, go
second.
ahead.
Okay. The problem, supplemental, is that when you make truth claims and knowledge statements, you're either invoking a contingent state of affairs or you'll be referring to the ultimacy of reality.
Right, and I would say that
All right.
it's
So
the former. I
do
mean,
you,
I'm
hold
not.
on. Okay. What people need to understand is you cannot conceptually disconnect invoking contingencies from the ultimacy of reality. Contingencies and possibilities and impossibilities are specific to and derivative of a model of reality or ultimacy. So your contingent states of affairs or knowledge claims have to be rooted in some ultimacy of reality. Now,
What if
if
they are?
you are unclear or uncommittal as to what the ultimate nature of reality is, then your invocation of contingent states of affairs is in virtue of I don't know. See the problem?
I mean, functionally, no.
If I took wait a minute. If I was a doctor and you came to me and you said, I've been feeling this discomfort here or whatever, and I said to you, oh, well, you have such and such disorder, and you say, well, why do you say that? I don't know. You're going to go, well, that's ridiculous. Okay. If you make a statement about a contingent state of affairs, those cannot be conceptually disconnected from its origin, from what the ultimate nature of reality is. Is because the ultimate nature of reality is that which provides the foundation and the framework for what is possible and not possible.
Right, but okay,
So no.
I
Are
see
you
what
saying
you're
you can't? Are you saying you can't know anything unless you have knowledge of the ultimacy?
Okay.
Yeah, and real quick, can I just finish this? Because
yeah,
we're
in principle.
going something good here.
Okay. In principle, if you make a statement, a knowledge statement, which is a contingent state of affairs, okay, then if you don't know what the foundation of that is, then you don't know that those contingencies actually exist.
What if the
Right.
foundation
What if the
is just
contingencies are based on the same level of uncertainty that underlie the same truth claim? It's
Okay, listen.
self. I mean, it could
Okay,
be the same
I'm going
thing.
to give you a term here. It's called metaphysical intelligibility. Right? Metaphysical intelligibility is not the same thing as semantical intelligibility. Metaphysical intelligibility means for any truth statement or knowledge claim that it ultimately is intelligible in the way things ultimately are. Okay? So, for example, if I were to say to you, the duck is swimming across the pond, that statement entails a number of unstated premises, such as causality, such as laws of nature, such as the reliability of your sense perception, the reliability of your cognition and memory faculties, that there are fundamental laws of logic. Okay? Now, those statements would be meaningless unless those prerequisites actually existed. Okay? So,
Well, I disagree.
oh, okay. Well, then explain to me how you can make a metaphysically intelligible statement without giving an account for the preconditions of those statements.
Well, I agree it is difficult because
No, it's impossible.
Well, I agree that when you make a claim, it is necessary or at least implies some degree of certainty about those things.
No, I'm not
about
talking
what a
about.
principle.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not discussing your confidence level. I'm discussing that you give me an account for any contingent states of affairs that you assert.
Well, see, that's
So
the
if you
whole thing. Is
okay,
it's
all
not
right, okay,
okay? Hey, how
okay,
about this? How about that? Can I refine what I said, please?
sure.
It's not a confidence level. It's more of the confidence may be high, but the confidence is in a probability range, not so much
Oh,
a
okay, okay.
absolute
Well, here's
statement.
the
Does that make
problem with
sense?
that. Well, here's the problem with that. Probability is based upon um, that there's a range of variables and a range of non-variables. Do you accept that?
I mean, yeah, as a working principle, yes. I mean, not as like
Okay,
a.
okay, good.
Yeah,
So
I want to straight. I'm
all
not
right,
make a
good.
strong claim on it. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Okay, so if you're going to invoke a probabilistic assessment, okay, then how do you account for what the range of non-variables are, and how do you account for what the range of variables are?
I mean,
Look, let me give you an
right,
let me
right.
give you
I see what
an
you're saying.
example. Let me give you an example. Imagine a plexiglass box filled with lottery ping pong balls. Now, if you know what the non-variables are, that there's 100 ping pong balls, and you know that there will be 10 balls selected, you could assess the probability of picking a certain number.
Right,
But now suppose that you don't know how many balls are going into the plexiglass container and how many are going out at any given moment. Okay. And you can't even see on the inside. So the number of ping pong balls at any given moment is unknown. And that you don't know whether the number of ping pong balls is increasing or decreasing, nor do you know the number of ping pong balls that will be selected, whether it's 100, 20, 5, 1, or even none. So if you don't have access to the what the variables are and the non-variables, you can't make any probabilistic assessment.
right.
The same is true with reality. If you don't know what the non-variables are in reality, and if you don't know what the variables are and the non-variables, how are you going to give a probabilistic assessment?
Right. So, okay, the ability to judge the probability in that circumstance is based upon perceptions, which, in my opinion, are probabilistic in and of themselves. I mean, in other words,
it's not you're not understanding. A probabilistic assessment can only be done if you have access to the background information. You don't have the access.
No,
Okay, you don't have access to the background information in your non-Christian worldview.
No, I have access to the background information in everything I encounter in life because, for example, in your hypothetical, in the hypothetical
Let
that you
me
came up with, can I
let me
please
explain.
just respond to this
Yeah.
real quick?
Okay. All right.
Okay, so and you can correct and do refine whatever. I'm just saying real quick. Okay, in your hypothetical with the balls and things, yes, the way you've defined it would make it very difficult for someone to use probability. But someone could also say, well, I know the maximum limit of like materials that are available in whatever society they live in. I mean, these kind of things. I mean, basically.
Wait a minute. Here's the problem. Okay, here's the problem.
Or I think I know.
Listen. Okay, listen. Let me ask you. Hold on a second. Okay. Does probabilities require the law of causality and that nature operates according to some laws?
Not necessarily, no.
No, wrong.
No, it doesn't, man. It's just
No,
probability.
no. Let me explain to you why that's incorrect, right? I want you to imagine a universe where there are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of events. Okay? Right? All of these events are discrete and don't have any causal connection or relation to any other event. They just happen spontaneously. Okay?
Okay.
So in that universe,
That doesn't really make sense. but-
there's no, well, hold on a second. I'm trying to give a thought experiment to explain to him why you need certain prerequisites to invoke probability. Now, in such a universe where each and every event is just happening spontaneously and there are no causal connections between events, and their nature does not operate according to some laws, then no probabilistic assessment can be made in such a universe. Do you understand that before I move on?
Well, no, because
That's
you
true,
can
that's true.
you can actually make a probabilistic assessment.
No, you can't.
It would be everything is average, the average of all of the
No,
things that are happening.
you listen, you're not understanding. Average, non-average are all based upon that there is causality and nature operates according to some laws. Okay.
No, well, can I please argue this one? Because actually,
Well, this is not
maybe I don't understand what you're saying.
dude. Okay, I'll shut up in a second. But what I'm telling you is not a debatable point.
Okay, well, can I please say my ignorant point that you can?
No, I'm not. It's not that if you disagree,
part-
it's not that you're ignorant. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm just okay. I have a different point of view. Okay, so let's say you live in that universe that doesn't operate according to causality, then you would have